Rain poured over the city, like the sky had finally given up holding its tears. On nights like this, most people hurried home. The streets emptied. The sidewalks reflected the yellow glow of streetlights, and every passing car left a trail of water behind. But inside a small roadside diner called Maple Corner Cafe, life never completely stopped. The smell of fresh coffee floated through the warm room, while soft jazz played quietly in the background. Behind the counter worked Emma Carter, a 24-year-old waitress whose smile had become brighter than her own life. No customer could tell that only a month earlier, Emma had buried her mother. No one knew the apartment she returned to every night was nearly empty. No one knew she worked double shifts just to keep paying rent. And no one knew she hadn't bought anything for herself in almost a year. Still, every customer received the same warm smile. Every child received an extra cookie if she could secretly afford it. Every elderly customer was treated like family. Because Emma believed one thing: if life refuses to be kind anyway. That evening, just before closing, the cafe door opened. A man walked inside wearing a soaked grey coat. His beard was untrimmed. His shoes were covered in mud. He carried no umbrella. Most customers glanced at him before quickly looking away. One businessman whispered loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Looks like another homeless guy." Another customer laughed. "Hope he can actually pay." Emma heard every word, but she ignored them. She walked over with the same gentle smile she gave everyone. "Good evening, sir. Please, come in out of the rain." The man looked surprised, almost as if he wasn't used to hearing kindness anymore. "I only need a cup of coffee." Emma nodded, coffee coming right up. He sat alone in the corner beneath the old window where rain tapped softly against the glass. For nearly an hour, he barely touched his drink. Instead, he watched people, families laughing together, friends celebrating birthdays, parents comforting tired children. His expression never changed, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who had lost something impossible to replace. Just before closing time, Emma noticed he quietly reached into his pocket. He counted a few worn bills, then stopped. His shoulders dropped. He was short, only a few dollars. Without saying anything, Emma walked to the register. She paid the remaining amount herself. Then she returned with the receipt. "It's taken care of." The man frowned. "I didn't ask for charity." Emma smiled. "It isn't charity." He looked confused. She replied softly, "Someone once helped my mother when we had nothing." She looked down for a second before continuing. "I promised myself I'd return that kindness whenever I could." The stranger stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, he gave a quiet nod. "Thank you."
There was something unusual about the way he said those two words. Not embarrassed, not grateful, almost heartbroken. As he stood to leave, he accidentally dropped something. Neither of them noticed. The cafe door closed behind him. The rain swallowed his silhouette. Emma finished wiping tables after midnight. She cleaned the corner booth where the stranger had been sitting. Then, her cloth touched something cold beneath the table. She bent down. It was a small velvet ring box, old, dark blue. Its corners were worn with age. She frowned. "Sir?" She rushed outside, but the street was empty. The stranger had disappeared. She returned inside. The manager had already gone home. The cafe was silent. Only the ticking wall clock remained. Emma slowly opened the tiny box. Inside rested an old silver ring. It wasn't covered in diamonds. It wasn't flashy. It looked almost ordinary, until she noticed the engraving. One single name, Evelyn. Nothing else. No date, no message. Just Evelyn.
Emma whispered the name aloud. Evelyn. Something about it felt strangely familiar, but she couldn't remember why. She placed the ring back inside its box. Tomorrow, she would hand it to the lost and found. Simple. That's what anyone would do. As she reached for her bag, something slipped out from beneath the velvet lining. A tiny folded piece of paper. Yellow with age, its edges were nearly falling apart. Emma carefully unfolded it. Only one sentence was written inside. "If this ring is ever found, don't give it to the police." Emma's heartbeat stopped. She read it again, slowly. Don't give it to the police. A chill ran through the empty cafe. Who leaves a note like that? Who was the stranger? And who was Evelyn? Outside, across the street, hidden inside a black luxury SUV with dark tinted windows. Someone had been watching the cafe the entire time. A man wearing black gloves lowered his binoculars. He picked up his phone. His voice was calm, but she found it. A pause.
Then the reply came through the speaker. So, everything has finally begun. Emma had no idea that the little silver ring now resting in her hands would change her life forever. Emma barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the old silver ring and the faded note hidden beneath its velvet lining. If this ring is ever found, don't give it to the police. It didn't sound like a prank. It sounded like a warning. By morning, she had convinced herself there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe the ring belonged to someone involved in a family dispute. Maybe the stranger feared it would be stolen. Maybe. But deep down, Emma knew something wasn't right. The next afternoon, Maple Corner Cafe was as busy as ever. Customers laughed over breakfast. Coffee machines hissed, plates clattered. Emma forced herself to smile through another long shift. Yet every few minutes, her hand instinctively touched the small ring box hidden safely inside her apron pocket. She couldn't stop thinking about the stranger. He hadn't returned. Not for his ring. Not for the note. Nothing. By evening, curiosity became stronger than fear. After work, Emma walked to the city's public library. If the ring had only one clue, then she would start there. Evelyn. The elderly librarian smiled kindly. Looking for someone specific? Emma hesitated. I'm not sure. Maybe someone from local history. The librarian pointed toward the newspaper archives. You'd be surprised how many old stories are hiding there. Hours passed. Emma searched through decades of newspapers. Wedding announcements, obituaries, birth records, charity events. Nothing seemed connected. She was about to give up when one yellowed newspaper caught her attention. The headline was over 25 years old. Local philanthropist Evelyn Hart missing after charity gala. Emma froze. She pulled the paper closer. The article explained that Evelyn Hart, a well-known woman who had devoted her life to helping orphan children, had vanished without a trace after attending a fundraising dinner. Police searched for months. No body was ever found. The case eventually went cold. Emma's eyes drifted to the old black and white photograph beside the article. An elegant woman, gentle smile, kind eyes, and on her left hand, a silver ring. Emma's breathing slowed. It looked exactly like the ring now hidden inside her pocket. She quickly copied the article and continued reading. Another sentence caught her attention. Mrs. Hart was last seen with her husband, businessman Richard Hart. Emma whispered the name. Richard Hart. She had heard it before. Where? Then it struck her. One of the largest children's foundations in the state still carried the Hart family name. Scholarships, hospitals, shelters. The Hart family had donated millions over the years. If Evelyn had disappeared, why did no one ever mention her anymore? As Emma packed her notes, someone quietly sat across from her. She hadn't heard the footsteps. The man wore a dark suit, perfectly pressed. His gray hair was neatly combed. His smile never reached his eyes. You've been reading interesting history. Emma looked up cautiously. I'm sorry. Do I know you? No? He smiled politely. But I know what you're holding. Emma's heart skipped. She instinctively placed her hand over her bag. I don't know what you mean. The ring. Silence. The man leaned forward. That ring doesn't belong to you. Emma stood immediately. If you've been following me, I'm calling the police. For the first time, the man's smile disappeared. You were told not to. Emma's face turned pale. How did he know about the note? He slowly stood. I'm trying to help you. Who are you? You don't need my name. What do you want? The ring. Emma shook her head. I don't even know why it's important. He answered quietly. Exactly.
Before she could ask another question, the library lights flickered. A loud crash echoed from another aisle. People screamed. Books fell from the shelves. Emma instinctively turned toward the noise. When she looked back, the man was gone, as if he had never been there. Outside, dusk settled over the city. Emma hurried toward the bus stop, constantly looking over her shoulder. Every passing stranger suddenly felt suspicious. Every parked car seemed to be watching her. When her bus finally arrived, she sat near the back. Across the aisle, an elderly woman smiled warmly. "You look frightened, dear." Emma forced a smile. "Long day." The woman nodded. Then her eyes fell to the velvet ring box sticking slightly out of Emma's bag. The smile vanished. She whispered almost inaudibly, "You have Evelyn's ring." Emma turned sharply. "What did you say?" The elderly woman's hands began to tremble. She looked around nervously before leaning closer. "If you value your life," she whispered, "don't let the Hart family know you found it." Emma's pulse pounded. "Why?" Tears filled the woman's eyes. "Because 25 years ago, they buried the wrong secret." Before Emma could ask another question, the bus stopped. The elderly woman quickly stepped off into the crowd. "Wait!" Emma rushed after her, but she was gone, completely vanished among the evening commuters. Emma stood frozen on the sidewalk. The ring suddenly felt much heavier inside her pocket. She no longer believed it was simply lost jewellery. It was evidence. Evidence of something that powerful people had spent decades trying to hide. And somewhere, someone still wanted it badly enough to follow a waitress with nothing more than kindness in her heart. High above the street, inside the same black SUV. The man in black gloves watched Emma through the windshield. He spoke into his phone. "She knows Evelyn's name now." A calm voice answered. "Good. And the waitress?" The reply came after a long silence. "Don't stop her. She's walking exactly where we need her to go." Emma didn't realise it, but every answer she uncovered was leading her toward a truth far more personal than she could ever imagine. Emma didn't go straight home. Instead, she walked aimlessly through the quiet streets, replaying every word she'd heard that day. "You have Evelyn's ring. Don't let the Hart family know you found it. They buried the wrong secret." None of it made sense. She was just a waitress. How had she become part of a 25-year-old mystery? Back in her apartment, Emma locked every door and window. She placed the velvet ring box on the kitchen table. For several minutes, she simply stared at it. It looked so ordinary. A worn blue box, an old silver ring, one engraved name, Evelyn. Yet strangers were following her. Someone clearly wanted the ring. Someone else wanted her to keep it. Emma carefully picked up the ring again. This time she noticed something she had missed before. Inside the band, beneath the engraved name, was a tiny symbol. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a number. It looked like a small maple leaf with a single star in its centre. It was so tiny that she almost needed a magnifying glass to see it. "What are you hiding?" she whispered. The next morning, Emma arrived early at the cafe. Her manager, Mrs. Lewis, immediately noticed something was wrong. "You look exhausted." "I couldn't sleep." Mrs. Lewis smiled sympathetically. "You work too hard." Emma forced a smile but said nothing. Just then, the cafe door opened. Emma instinctively looked up. Her heart skipped. It wasn't the stranger. Instead, 2 expensive black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. 3 sharply dressed men entered the cafe. Everyone inside grew quiet. The men didn't order coffee. They didn't sit down. Their eyes slowly scanned every corner of the room. Then one of them approached Emma. "We're looking for a man." Emma remained calm. What man? He pulled out a photograph. It was the soaked stranger from the rainy night, the same man who had left the ring. "Have you seen him?" Emma hesitated for the briefest moment. "No." The man studied her face. "You seem nervous. I'm serving breakfast." Without another word, he placed a business card on the counter. "If you remember anything, call us." They left as quickly as they had arrived. Emma looked down at the card. There was no company name, only one line: Hart Foundation Security Division. Her stomach tightened. The Hart family was already searching. During her lunch break, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the tiny symbol inside the ring. She searched online for antique jewellery marks. Nothing matched. Then she remembered an old jewellery repair shop just 3 blocks away. The owner was known for restoring vintage watches and rings. If anyone recognised the mark, he would. The little shop smelled of polished wood and machine oil. Tiny clocks ticked on every wall. Behind the counter stood an elderly jeweller with steady hands and silver hair. "Can I help you?" Emma hesitated before placing the ring on the counter. "I'd like to know where this came from." The old man adjusted his glasses. The moment he saw the ring, his expression changed. His hands froze. "Where did you get this? It belonged to someone who lost it." He picked it up carefully, almost respectfully. "I haven't seen one of these in over 20 years. Emma leaned closer. "You recognize it?" He nodded slowly. "This wasn't sold in stores." "What do you mean?" "It was custom made. Only 2 rings like this ever existed." Emma's heartbeat quickened. "2?" The jeweller nodded. "One belonged to Evelyn Hart, and the other—" He stopped speaking. "The other belonged to the man she trusted more than anyone." Emma frowned. "Her husband?" The jeweller slowly shook his head. "No, not her husband." Before Emma could ask another question, the shop's front bell rang. A customer had entered. The jeweller looked toward the door. His face suddenly turned pale. He whispered urgently, "Put the ring away. Now." Emma turned. Standing inside the doorway was the same grey-haired man from the library. Perfect suit, calm smile, cold eyes. He hadn't come by accident. He had followed her. The man walked slowly toward the counter. "Good afternoon." The jeweller forced a nervous smile. "Can I help you?" The stranger looked directly at Emma. "I believe the young lady has something that belongs to my family." Emma didn't answer. The jeweller quietly slid the ring back toward her, beneath the counter. His movement was almost invisible. The grey-haired man noticed anyway. His smile widened. "I don't enjoy repeating myself." Emma stood. "I don't know who you are." He nodded politely. "That's true. But I know exactly who you are." Emma's blood ran cold. "You work at Maple Corner Cafe. You live alone. You volunteer every second Sunday at the neighbourhood shelter. You visit your mother's grave every Friday." Emma stepped backward. "How do you know all that?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he calmly said, "You've been watched since the moment you found the ring." Silence filled the shop. Then he placed an envelope on the counter. Inside is $50,000. Emma stared at him. "Take the money. Give me the ring." No questions. No trouble. The amount was more money than Emma had ever imagined owning. It could erase every debt, pay off her rent, start a new life. For just one ring. The grey-haired man smiled. "I think that's a fair offer." Emma looked at the envelope, then at the ring. Finally, she pushed the envelope back across the counter. "No." The man raised an eyebrow. "You haven't even counted it. I don't care how much money is inside. It doesn't belong to you." His smile disappeared. For the first time, his voice became cold. "You're making a mistake." Emma met his eyes without flinching. "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." For several long seconds, neither of them moved. Finally, the man picked up the envelope. "You remind me of someone." He turned toward the door. "And people like her." He paused. "Always pay the highest price." He walked away. The bell above the door rang once, then silence. The jeweller immediately locked the shop. His hands were shaking. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Emma whispered. "Then tell me." The old man looked at Evelyn's ring. His eyes filled with sadness. "I can't tell you everything, but I can tell you this. The man who left that ring in your cafe, he wasn't homeless." Emma's heart pounded. "Who was he?" The jeweller took a slow breath. He was the only person who knew what really happened to Evelyn Hart. Emma stood frozen. "But if he gave you that ring—" The old man looked toward the rain-covered window. "Then I'm afraid he's probably already dead." Emma felt the room spin around her. The stranger who had quietly accepted a cup of coffee, the man she had shown a small act of kindness, hadn't accidentally left the ring behind. He had entrusted it to her. Because somehow he knew he wasn't coming back. Emma couldn't speak. The jeweller's final words echoed in her mind. He wasn't homeless. He was the only person who knew what really happened to Evelyn Hart. He's probably already dead. The stranger's tired eyes, the sadness in his voice, the way he had looked around the cafe as if he were saying goodbye to the world. It all made sense now. He hadn't wandered into the diner by accident. He had chosen Emma. The old jeweller disappeared into the back room. When he returned, he carried a small wooden box covered in dust. He placed it on the counter with great care. I hoped I would never have to open this again. Emma watched silently. Inside the box were old sketches of rings, faded receipts, and a leather notebook, whose pages had turned yellow with age. The jeweller slowly flipped through the notebook. Finally, he stopped. There. He turned the book toward Emma. A hand-drawn sketch of the exact same silver ring stared back at her. Every tiny detail was identical, even the maple leaf engraved inside the band. Beneath the drawing was a short note. Pair 1, never separate them. Emma frowned. You said there were only 2. The jeweller nodded. I made them myself. Emma looked up in surprise. You? He smiled sadly. I was much younger then. Evelyn wanted something simple. No diamonds, no expensive stones. She said love didn't need to shine to be real. The old man closed the notebook, but she also wanted one secret. The maple leaf. He nodded. It wasn't decoration. It was a symbol, a promise shared between only 2 people. Emma leaned forward. What promise? The jeweller hesitated. I don't know. Evelyn never told me, but she did say one thing. If the rings are ever separated, it means someone has broken that promise. Emma carefully picked up the ring again. Suddenly, she heard a faint rattle. She looked down. Something inside the ring was moving. Her eyes widened. Did you hear that? The jeweller took the ring. He gently tapped it against the wooden counter. A tiny metallic sound answered. His face changed instantly. Impossible. What? He grabbed a magnifying glass and examined the inside edge. There shouldn't be a hollow chamber. He carefully pressed the tiny maple leaf with a thin tool. Nothing happened. He tried again. A soft click echoed through the quiet shop. Emma gasped. The ring slowly opened. Not into 2 pieces, but just enough to reveal a hidden compartment no bigger than a grain of rice. Inside was a tightly rolled strip of paper. The jeweller looked stunned. I've repaired hundreds of rings. I never knew this one had a secret compartment. Emma carefully removed the paper with tweezers. It was incredibly delicate. She unfolded it as gently as she could. Only a single sentence had been written. Locker 214. Grand Central Station. Nothing else. No signature. No date. No explanation. Emma looked at the jeweller. What does this mean? He slowly shook his head. It means Evelyn planned further ahead than anyone imagined. At that exact moment, a black SUV stopped across the street. The grey-haired man sat inside. He watched through the windshield. His phone rang. Has she opened the ring? Not yet, he replied. A calm voice answered. Don't interfere. She's getting close. The grey-haired man looked at the jewellery shop. And if she finds the locker? Silence. Then we begin phase 2. The line went dead. Emma thanked the jeweller and left with the ring safely hidden in her pocket. She decided not to go home. If the note mentioned a locker, she had to see it before anyone else did. The evening train station was crowded. Business travellers hurried toward platforms. Children laughed. Announcements echoed through the massive terminal. It was the perfect place to disappear. Emma found the old locker section tucked away near the far wall. Most of the lockers had modern electronic locks, but one corner still held several older metal lockers. Her eyes scanned the numbers. 210, 211, 212, 213. Then 214. It looked untouched. Rust covered the edges. Dust had gathered around its lock, almost as if no one had opened it for years. Emma swallowed hard. Her hands trembled as she reached toward it. Locked. Of course, she looked around. No key, no clue. Nothing. Then she remembered the ring, the tiny maple leaf, the hidden compartment. Could there be another secret? She examined the lock carefully. At the centre was a tiny symbol, a maple leaf, exactly like the one inside the ring. Emma slowly inserted the ring into the unusual keyhole. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, click. The lock opened by itself. Emma froze. She slowly pulled the heavy metal door. open. Inside, there wasn't money, there wasn't jewellery, there wasn't a weapon, only one weathered leather envelope. Across the front, written in elegant handwriting, were 6 words, "For the person I can finally trust." Emma's heart pounded. She carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. The ink had faded with time. She began to read. "If you're holding this, then I have already failed. The people chasing this ring will tell you lies. They will say I disappeared. They will say I ran away. Do not believe them." Emma's breathing became shallow. She turned the page. "My name is Evelyn Hart?" Before she could read another word, the station lights suddenly went dark. The entire terminal fell into darkness. People screamed. Emergency alarms echoed through the building. Emma looked up in panic. Footsteps, fast. Several pairs, running directly toward locker 214. Someone knew exactly where she was. She clutched Evelyn's letter tightly against her chest and ran the moment the lights went out. Chaos swallowed Grand Central Station. Children cried, people shouted. The emergency alarms echoed through the enormous terminal. In the darkness, Emma clutched Evelyn's letter against her chest and ran. She had no idea where she was going. She only knew one thing. Someone had cut the power. And they weren't after money. They were after the letter. Behind her, heavy footsteps pounded across the station floor. Flashlights swept through the darkness. Voices shouted. "She's heading toward platform 6. No, block the east exit." Emma ducked behind a concrete pillar, trying to slow her breathing. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She carefully unfolded the letter again. The emergency lights cast a faint red glow across the faded paper. She continued reading. "If this letter has reached you, then the man carrying my ring has kept his promise. His name is Daniel Brooks." Emma whispered the name. Daniel. So that was the stranger's name. He hadn't been homeless, he had been Evelyn's protector. The letter continued. "For 25 years, Daniel carried this ring because I asked him to. If he ever gave it away, it would mean he believed someone kind enough had finally appeared." Emma felt tears filling her eyes. She remembered Daniel's gentle smile, the way he had refused charity, the sadness hidden behind his eyes. He hadn't been looking for help, he had been looking for hope. Suddenly, a flashlight beam swept across the pillar. "There she is!" Emma folded the letter and ran again. She pushed through frightened passengers and raced toward a maintenance hallway. The footsteps followed. Closer, closer. Then a strong hand grabbed her arm. Emma gasped. She tried to pull away. "It's okay," a calm voice whispered. "I'm here to help." Standing before her was a middle-aged janitor wearing a station uniform. His face looked ordinary. But when Emma noticed the small maple leaf pin on his jacket, her eyes widened. "You know Evelyn?" The man nodded once. "No time. Come with me." He led her through a narrow service corridor hidden behind a maintenance door. The sounds of the station disappeared behind thick concrete walls. After several turns, they reached a tiny storage room. The man locked the door. Only then did he finally speak. "My name is Samuel. I worked for the Hart family years ago." Emma stared at him. "Were you with Evelyn?" Samuel smiled sadly. "No, I worked for someone who believed in her." Emma showed him the letter. "Who was Daniel?" Samuel's eyes became distant. He wasn't her husband. He wasn't her brother. He wasn't her bodyguard. He was simply her oldest friend. Samuel sat down heavily. For years, people spread rumours. They claimed Daniel stole Evelyn's fortune. They called him a criminal. They destroyed his name. Emma remembered how customers had laughed at the soaked stranger, how quickly people judged him. Her chest tightened. "They never knew," Samuel whispered, "that he sacrificed everything to protect her final wish." Emma unfolded the next page. Her hands trembled. "Richard Hart believes he owns everything, but there is one thing he never found. The truth." Emma exchanged a worried glance with Samuel. "The Hart family." Samuel interrupted quietly. "Not the whole family. Only one man, Richard. He spent 25 years making sure no one asked what really happened that night." Emma continued reading. "If Richard is still alive, he will try to stop you. Do not hate him. The truth is already his punishment. Emma frowned. Why would Evelyn ask for forgiveness? After everything? She turned the page, but the next sheet had been torn in half. The rest of the message was missing. No, Emma whispered desperately. It can't end here. Samuel gently took the letter. He examined the torn edge. It didn't end here, it was ripped apart. Someone removed the final pages. Before Emma could respond, Samuel's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen. His expression immediately changed. We have to leave. Now. Why, they found us. Outside. The grey-haired man calmly walked through the maintenance corridor. 3 security men followed behind him. One of them asked, Should we take the letter? The grey-haired man shook his head. No, she'll lead us to the missing pages. He smiled faintly, just like Daniel did. Samuel led Emma through another hidden exit that opened into an old parking garage beneath the station. Rows of abandoned maintenance vehicles sat covered in dust. Near the far wall, a dark blue pickup truck waited with its engine running. Samuel handed Emma the keys. You drive. Emma looked confused. What about you? I'll slow them down. No, I'm not leaving you. Samuel smiled. Daniel once told me. Kind people always argue before saving themselves. He chuckled softly. You remind me of him. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I don't even know why I'm part of this. Samuel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Because Daniel chose you, and Daniel never trusted the wrong person. He reached into his pocket and handed her an old photograph. It showed 3 young people standing beside a lake. Emma immediately recognized Evelyn. Next to her stood a smiling young man, Daniel. But it was the third person who caught Emma's attention. A little girl, about 5 years old, laughing as Evelyn held her hand. Who is she? Samuel looked at the photograph for a long moment. I don't know. Daniel never told me, but Evelyn protected that little girl with her life. Emma turned the photo over. Written on the back were 6 faded words. She deserves the truth one day. Before Emma could ask another question, voices echoed through the garage. They're down here. Samuel quickly opened the driver's door. Go. Emma hesitated. You'll be caught. Samuel smiled peacefully. I've been waiting 25 years for tonight. It's finally time. With tears streaming down her face. Emma started the truck. As she sped out of the underground garage, she looked once in the rearview mirror. Samuel stepped into the middle of the garage. Alone. Facing the men chasing them. He didn't run. He simply stood there. Waiting. Giving Emma the precious seconds she needed to escape. Miles away. Inside a magnificent estate, overlooking the city. An elderly man stood before a fireplace, staring at an old portrait of Evelyn Hart. His hands trembled. A servant entered quietly. Sir. The girl escaped. The old man closed his eyes for the first time in decades. A tear rolled down his face. He whispered almost to himself. So. Daniel finally found her. The servant hesitated. Should we stop her? The old man slowly shook his head. No. If she's the one he chose, then the truth has already begun. Emma drove into the rainy night, still unaware that the little girl in the faded photograph had a connection to her life far deeper than she could possibly imagine. Rain hammered against the windshield as Emma drove through the empty highway. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Her mind wasn't on the road. It was on the old photograph resting on the passenger seat. Evelyn, Daniel, and the little girl. She deserves the truth one day. Those 6 words refused to leave her mind. Who was the little girl? Why had Evelyn protected her? And why did Daniel believe Emma was the right person to uncover the truth? After driving for nearly an hour, Emma reached a quiet lakeside motel. It was old, almost forgotten. Exactly the kind of place no one would think to search. She rented a small room under her first name only. The elderly owner handed her the key. You look like you've had a long night. Emma forced a smile. I have. Once inside, she locked the door, closed every curtain, and spread everything across the bed. The ring, the photograph, the unfinished letter, the newspaper clipping, every clue she had collected. She stared at them for several minutes. There has to be something I'm missing. She picked up the photograph again. This time she examined every inch of it. The lake, the trees, the smiling faces. Then she noticed something in the background. A wooden cabin, barely visible. Above its front door hung a carved sign. The image was blurry. Emma used the flashlight on her phone and enlarged the picture, letter by letter. The words slowly became clear. Whispering Pines. Emma searched the name online. Only one result appeared. An abandoned summer cabin nearly 2 hours north of the city. Closed for over 20 years. Her heartbeat quickened. What if that's where the rest of the letter is? At sunrise, Emma left the motel. She had barely driven 20 miles when she noticed a black SUV several cars behind her. Her stomach tightened. She took an unexpected exit. The SUV followed. She turned onto a narrow country road, still following. They found me, Emma accelerated. The rain made the road slippery. The SUV stayed close. Suddenly, a large logging truck pulled between them at a sharp intersection. Emma seized the opportunity. She turned onto a small gravel road hidden by tall pine trees. By the time the SUV cleared the truck, she had disappeared. 2 hours later, Emma stood before the abandoned cabin. Nature had almost reclaimed it. The porch was broken. The windows were covered in dust. Vines climbed the walls. A faded wooden sign still read, Whispering Pines. Emma slowly pushed the front door. It creaked open. Inside, time had stood still. Old furniture, a stone fireplace, shelves filled with books. A child's rocking horse sat quietly in one corner. Emma's eyes fell on it immediately. The horse looked strangely familiar. Then she remembered. She had seen the exact same rocking horse in the photograph. This was their hiding place, she whispered. She carefully searched the cabin. Nothing. No documents. No hidden boxes. No clues. Just as disappointment began to settle in. She noticed a loose floorboard beneath the rocking horse. Her pulse quickened. She knelt down and gently lifted it. Underneath was a small metal tin. Rust covered every corner. Inside the tin were 3 things: a silver key, a cassette tape, and an old envelope. Across the envelope, written in Evelyn's handwriting, were the words, "For Lily." Emma frowned. Lily? That wasn't her name. She carefully opened the envelope. Inside was another letter. My sweet Lily. If you're reading this, then I couldn't keep my promise. Emma felt her throat tighten. The letter continued. One day you'll hear terrible things about me. People will say I abandoned you. They will say I disappeared because I wanted a different life. Please don't believe them. Tears formed in Emma's eyes. The words felt painfully real. Every choice I made to keep you alive. Emma could barely breathe. Who was Lily? She reached the final page. Halfway through, the writing stopped. Not because the letter had ended, because the page had been stained by water. Or tears. Only one sentence remained readable. Tell her. She was always my daughter. Emma froze. Daughter. So the little girl in the photograph was Evelyn's daughter. But why had no newspaper ever mentioned a child? Why had history erased her? Just then, the old cassette player sitting on a dusty shelf caught Emma's attention. She looked at the cassette tape from the tin. The labels matched. With trembling hands, she inserted the tape. For several seconds, only static. Then, a woman's gentle voice filled the quiet cabin. My name is Evelyn Hart. Emma closed her eyes. She was hearing the voice of a woman who had vanished 25 years earlier. If someone is listening to this, then Daniel succeeded. I don't have much time. I know Richard will come for me. I know he wants something that doesn't belong to him. Emma listened without moving. My greatest fear isn't dying. It's that my daughter will grow up believing I abandoned her. Emma wiped away a tear. Then Evelyn said something that changed everything. If you're listening, please tell Lily. Her real name was never Lily. Emma opened her eyes. What? The tape crackled. I changed her name the night we escaped. No one must ever know who she really is. Emma's heartbeat became deafening. The recording continued. Daniel knows the truth. He knows where she is. He promised me. He would protect her until the day she could protect herself. Suddenly, the tape stopped, not because it had finished. Someone had cut the recording. Emma stared at the cassette player. Then she heard it. A car door slamming outside. Another. Then another. She slowly walked to the dusty window. 3 black SUVs had surrounded the cabin. Men in dark suits stepped out. The grey-haired man stood among them. He looked directly at the window, almost as if he knew exactly where she was standing. He smiled, then calmly spoke into a radio. She found the tape. "Move in." Emma looked around desperately. There was no back exit, no place to hide. Then her eyes landed on the old silver key from the tin. A tiny tag was attached to it. Only 4 handwritten words appeared on the faded paper. Hart Children's Home. Emma's breath caught. That orphanage. She knew it. She had grown up there. At that exact moment. The front door exploded open. Heavy footsteps thundered through the cabin. Emma clutched the ring, the letters, the cassette, and the key against her chest. For the first time, a terrifying thought entered her mind. What if this mystery had never been about Evelyn's daughter? What if it had been about her all along? The cabin door crashed against the wall. Heavy boots thundered across the wooden floor. Emma grabbed the ring, Evelyn's letters, the cassette tape, and the silver key. She looked around desperately. There was nowhere to run. The windows were too small. The back wall was solid stone. She was trapped. A deep voice echoed from the hallway. "Emma, we're not here to hurt you." The grey-haired man slowly stepped into the room. His expensive suit was untouched by the rain. His expression remained calm, almost sympathetic. Behind him stood 4 security men. None of them raised a weapon. Instead, the grey-haired man extended his hand. "Please, give me the ring." Emma shook her head. "No, you've been chasing me since the cafe. I know you're lying." The man sighed. "I've spent 25 years cleaning up someone else's mistakes. I'm tired of running." Emma stared at him. "Who are you?" "My name is Thomas Reed. I was Evelyn Hart's personal attorney." Emma's eyes widened. "You worked for Evelyn?" "I worked for both Evelyn and Richard. But when the truth came out, I chose the wrong side." Silence filled the cabin. Thomas lowered his eyes. "I've regretted that decision every day since." Emma tightened her grip on the cassette. "If you really regret it, then tell me the truth." Thomas nodded slowly. "You deserve that." He dismissed the security men with a wave of his hand. They quietly stepped outside. For the first time, Emma and Thomas stood alone. Thomas looked toward the old fireplace. 26 years ago. Richard Hart wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was drowning in debt. Emma frowned. Debt. Thomas nodded. He secretly lost almost everything. If the public discovered it, the Hart Foundation would collapse. The hospitals, the orphanages, the scholarships, everything. Emma whispered, "So what happened?" Thomas closed his eyes. Richard discovered that Evelyn had inherited something. What? A trust, worth hundreds of millions. But there was one condition. Emma waited. The money could never belong to Richard. It belonged only to Evelyn. And eventually, to her daughter. Emma's heart skipped. Lily. Thomas nodded. Yes, Evelyn refused to sign the inheritance over. They argued for months. Then one night, she disappeared. Emma stared at him. Did Richard kill her? Thomas remained silent. Several painful seconds passed. Finally, I don't know. I was told she ran away. I believed it. I helped hide the paperwork. I helped bury the truth. His voice broke. By the time I realised I had been manipulated, it was too late. Emma slowly reached into her pocket and removed the old photograph. She pointed to the little girl. This child. Where is she? Thomas looked at the picture. Tears filled his eyes. No one knows. Daniel vanished with her. They disappeared the same night. Emma remembered Evelyn's recording. Daniel promised me. He would protect her until the day she could protect herself. Suddenly, everything began connecting. Daniel had never abandoned the little girl. He had saved her. Thomas looked directly into Emma's eyes. Daniel spent 25 years hiding her. He changed her identity. He moved from town to town. He never stayed anywhere long. Emma whispered. Why? Thomas answered softly. Because Richard never stopped searching. Emma's hands trembled. The words from the orphanage key echoed inside her mind. Hart Children's Home, the orphanage where she had grown up. She slowly looked at Thomas. I grew up in that orphanage. Thomas froze. What did you say? I was left there when I was 5. I don't remember anything before that. Thomas's face turned completely pale. 5? He whispered. How old was Evelyn's daughter when she disappeared? Emma asked. Thomas swallowed hard. 5. The room fell silent. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Thomas slowly reached into his wallet. He removed an old newspaper clipping. It contained a faded photograph. Emma's breathing stopped. The little girl smiling beside Evelyn had the same eyes, the same smile, the same small birthmark near her left eyebrow. Emma instinctively touched her own eyebrow. The birthmark was still there. She looked back at the picture, then at Thomas. No, she whispered. This can't be. Thomas's hands shook violently. My God, Daniel actually did it. He saved you. Emma's knees weakened. She collapsed into an old chair. Every memory she had ever questioned. Every missing piece of her childhood. Every unanswered dream. Suddenly made sense. She wasn't simply an orphan. She had never been abandoned. She had been hidden, protected, loved. Tears rolled down Emma's face. My mother, Evelyn. She didn't leave me. Thomas slowly shook his head. No. She sacrificed everything, so you could live. Emma closed her eyes. For 24 years, she had believed no one wanted her. Now she discovered. Her mother had given up her own life to save hers. At that moment, a black luxury sedan pulled into the cabin driveway. Everyone outside turned towards it. The rear door opened. An elderly man stepped out with the help of a cane. His hair was completely white, his shoulders were bent with age, but his eyes still carried authority. Thomas immediately lowered his head. Richard. Emma slowly stood. The man walked into the cabin. He stopped only a few feet away from Emma. Neither of them spoke. Richard stared at her face. His eyes filled with tears. You, he whispered. You have Evelyn's eyes. Emma's voice trembled. You destroyed my family. Richard closed his eyes. I know. You stole my childhood. I know. You spent 25 years hunting me. I know. Every answer was the same. I know. Emma felt anger rising inside her. You don't deserve forgiveness. Richard nodded slowly. No, I don't. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat. Thomas instinctively stepped forward. Sir. Richard raised one hand. It's time. He removed a thick sealed envelope. Across the front, written in Evelyn's handwriting, were the words, to be opened only in my daughter's presence. Emma stared at the envelope in disbelief. Richard held it out with trembling hands. I've carried this for 25 years. I was too ashamed to open it. Emma slowly accepted the envelope. Her fingers shook as they touched the faded paper. Whatever was inside would finally reveal what happened on the night Evelyn disappeared, and whether Richard Hart was truly the villain, or a broken man carrying a terrible secret. The cabin fell completely silent. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. Only the sound of water dripping from the trees could be heard. Emma stared at the faded envelope in her hands. The paper had yellowed with age. Across the front, written in elegant handwriting, were the words, to be opened only in my daughter's presence. Her hands trembled. For 24 years. She had believed she was unwanted. Now. Her mother's final words were waiting for her. Emma slowly broke the old wax seal. Inside, there were 3 things: a handwritten letter, a family photograph, and a small cassette labelled, For Emma. Emma froze. My name. Richard lowered his head. Evelyn changed your name to Lily before you disappeared. But before that, she wanted to name you Emma. Tears filled Emma's eyes. Her mother had chosen that name long before she had ever known it. She unfolded the letter. The first line made her burst into tears. My dearest Emma. Not Lily. Not daughter. Emma. She wiped her eyes and began reading. if these words ever reach you, then God has answered the only prayer I repeated every single day. I prayed that you would grow into a kind woman, not a wealthy one, not a powerful one. Kind. Emma could barely continue. Daniel promised he would never tell you who you were until you became the kind of person who would never use this family's name for selfish reasons. If he has finally trusted you with my ring, then I know he kept that promise. Emma remembered the rainy night. Daniel had watched her quietly pay for his coffee. He hadn't chosen her because she was special. He had chosen her because she was kind. The letter continued. You may wonder why I disappeared. The truth is painful. Richard never intended to kill me. Emma looked up in surprise. Richard stood silently, tears rolling down his face. She continued reading. The night we argued. I left the house with Daniel because someone else had discovered the inheritance. They followed us. Our car crashed near the river. Daniel escaped with you. I couldn't. Emma's breathing became shallow. I knew I wasn't going to survive, so I asked Daniel to disappear. Not because I feared Richard, but because I feared the people who wanted our family's fortune. Thomas covered his face. So Richard never knew, Emma whispered. Richard slowly shook his head. I spent 25 years believing she hated me. Emma turned to the final page. The ink had faded, but every word remained readable. Richard made terrible mistakes. He allowed pride to become more important than truth. He believed lies because they were easier to live with. But hatred is too heavy to leave for the next generation. If he is still alive, please forgive him, not because he deserves it, but because you deserve peace. Emma lowered the letter. The room was silent. Richard collapsed into a chair. For the first time, the proud businessman looked like nothing more than a lonely old man. With shaking hands, Emma placed the cassette into an old player Samuel had carried into the cabin after escaping the confrontation. Static filled the room. Then, Evelyn's gentle voice returned. My beautiful Emma. If you're hearing my voice, then I never got the chance to watch you grow. I never saw your first day of school. I never celebrated your birthdays. I never told you how proud I already was. Emma covered her mouth to stop herself from crying aloud. I don't care whether you become rich. I don't care whether people remember my name. I only hope one day you'll help someone who can never repay you. Emma smiled through tears. She remembered every elderly customer, every lonely child, every free meal she had quietly paid for. Without realizing it, she had already become the daughter Evelyn dreamed of. The recording continued. Daniel, if you're listening too, thank you. You gave away 25 years of your own life, so my daughter could have one. Emma closed her eyes. Daniel had never asked for recognition. He had lived like a poor stranger, carrying nothing except an old silver ring, waiting for the right moment to return a daughter to her mother. Even after death, he had kept his promise. Richard slowly stood. I have something else. He handed Emma a worn leather folder. Inside were legal documents, the Heart Foundation, the hospitals, the children's homes, the scholarships. They all belong to you now. Emma quietly closed the folder. I don't want them. Thomas looked stunned. Emma. It's worth hundreds of millions. Emma smiled gently. My mother didn't spend her last moments protecting money. She protected people. She looked at Richard. If I accept this, it will never belong to me. Richard frowned. What do you mean? Emma looked toward the rain-soaked window. It belongs to every child who thinks they've been forgotten. 6 months later. The world learned the truth. Newspapers corrected 25 years of lies. Daniel Brooks was publicly honoured as the man who had sacrificed everything to protect an innocent child. A memorial was built beside the small cafe where his final journey had begun. The old silver ring now rested inside a glass case beneath his photograph. The inscription read, Kindness changed history. Richard Hart appeared before the public for the first time in decades. He admitted the mistakes he had made. He confessed that fear and pride had blinded him. He resigned from every position he held. Instead of spending his final years defending his reputation, he spent them visiting hospitals and orphanages, quietly apologising to people he had failed. Some forgave him, some never did. He accepted both, because forgiveness could never be demanded, only earned. Emma returned to Maple Corner Cafe. She refused expensive offices. She refused bodyguards. Every Friday, she still served coffee. One rainy evening, a young boy entered the cafe. His clothes were worn. He nervously counted the few dollars in his pocket. He didn't have enough. The customers began whispering. Emma smiled. She quietly paid the rest of the bill. The boy looked up. "I'll pay you back someday." Emma smiled warmly. "You don't have to." He looked confused. "Why?" Emma glanced at Daniel's memorial across the street. Then she answered softly. "Because someone once taught me that kindness always finds its way home." Years later, the Hart Foundation became known for something very different, not for its wealth, not for its powerful name, but because no child was ever turned away for being poor. At the entrance of every children's home, one sentence was engraved in stone. A small act of kindness can change someone's entire future. And beneath those words were three names: Evelyn Hart, Daniel Brooks, Emma Carter. The silver ring had completed its journey, not by making someone rich, but by bringing truth, forgiveness, family, and hope back to people who had almost forgotten they existed. Sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the courage to choose kindness, even when no one is watching.